umbrella broke.
That's the sync for audio 1. Do you remember when you were small and you could get up at like 6 in the morning and it wouldn't be this terrible reality you had to face? You'd run downstairs and flip on your giant box TV and just flip through the channels until you found the one with all the cartoons on it. And then you sit back and eat like a bowl of honeycombs or, Kix in your pajamas until like 1 in the afternoon when it's too hot to be wearing your pajamas anymore and it starts getting staticky and clings to your body. Well, if you don't remember that, I want to talk to your parents because they failed you and that's unacceptable. Today we're going to talk about those morning cartoons and not your daddy's cartoons. These cartoons were for kids. And by that I mean we're talking about 4Kids, talking about 4kidsTV. The year was 1970 and people did whatever they did then, because I wasn't around, I don't know. And then on April 28th, two guys by the names of Mike Gurmakian, that word, and Sam Weston, who created G.I. Joe, they got together and they formed a new company called Leisure Concepts, or LCI for you kids in the fast lane. They tried getting into the toy business and had some moderate success, again mostly producing stuff like G.I. Joe toys because they had the license to that because the guy made it, And they even ended up partnering up with Rankin Bass, which, if you didn't know, made all of these things, the classic Christmas cartoons that everyone watches every year. So that was a pretty big deal for a new company. They went on to buy licenses to things like James Bond, the Hulk, Buck Rogers, a few Nintendo characters, and Farrah Fawcett, if you didn't know, was one of 3 Charlie's Angels, but the only one that they got the licensing to. I guess the other 2 just didn't meet up to Mikey's standards. In the mid-80s, specifically 1985, as middle of 80s as you can get, the dynamic duo of Mikey and Weston met a not-so-young man by the name of Ted Wolfe. Ted approached the duo with a new idea, Thundercats. With Ted's idea, the two got straight to work. Stan went ahead and pitched the idea to Rankin Bass, and they ate that shit up. They loved it. And as soon as they got the green light, Mike started getting to work in his sketchbook. He created the character designs, the car designs, weapon designs, location designs, the logo, really anything else. A quick little fun fact, LCI isn't found anywhere on anything that has to do with Thundercats, and that's why teachers don't trust Wikipedia. In 1987, LCI put to use that Nintendo license they bought way back a few minutes ago and started producing some Legend of Zelda toys, mostly because at the same time, Legend of Zelda was coming out, so they made toys for it to sell because that's how products work. They also got their hands on some Star Wars licenses and started producing Star Wars toys as well. Later in the same year, a man by the name of Robert Kotick introduced himself in the way of buying a majority share in the company and becoming its new CEO and chairman, as you do. Fast forward to 1991, where Mr. Kotick pulls another epic move and bails from the company, selling his shares and then buying yet another company, a small little indie developer, you might know them, Activision. They went on to make some good games and then also some other games. But don't worry too much, LCI wasn't dead quite yet. On March 12th of the same year, the company found a new CEO in a man called Alfred Kahn, which is seemingly a risky move considering that Kahn hadn't done much of anything up until that point, or at least not that I could find on the World Wide Web. In 1992, Alfred ushers in a new era for the company, this being an expansion towards television. They started grabbing certain animes and then dubbing them over for kids from their new company called 4Kids. 4Kids Productions specifically. One of their biggest successes with this happened to be the Pokemon anime, which I know a lot of people my age grew up with.
Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
Now, I should not have to point this out, but those are not jelly donuts. Now, 4Kids was notorious for doing this kind of thing, especially in the Pokemon dub, just because they figured that people in an American audience wouldn't know what Japanese people eat, so they decided to pull things off like that. They started dubbing over that cartoon in 1997 and kept doing it into the into the future. They hosted their cartoon dubbing on the Kids WB, and it remained that way for a long time. This will play a moderate to substantial role in the future. A few years later, in 1995, Alfred actually changed the name of the company from LCI over to 4Kids Entertainment, and this would usher in the era of 4Kids. But now we fast forward again. The year is 2000, and it's a relatively cold day in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, that being because it is February 17th of that year. And on that day, I showed up and was ready to become what you see before you today. But while I was drooling and passing out on the floor, as an infant, 4Kids went on to buy some licenses with Hot Wheels and started producing a certain number of, cars. That's what they did. Namely, they made some wrestler cars, and then they also made the Gravedigger monster truck Hot Wheels that seemingly everyone I knew growing up with had, including me. I had like 3 of them. It was ridiculous. The next year, that being 2001, 4Kids buys the licenses for another show to start dubbing that over as well. And that ended up being a little card game you might know called Yu-Gi-Oh! But yeah, they went on and produced an English dub for it for American audiences, and well, what can I say? It slaps.
Exodia! It's not possible! No one's ever been able to call him!
Exodia! Obliterate!
He died for real? Okay, so it's a little goofy, but as a kid it had me on the edge of my ding-dang seat. The first episode of the show aired in America on September 29th, 2001 on the Kids WB alongside Pokemon. And then shortly next year, January of 2002, 4Kids paid Fox 100 million big greens to air their Saturday morning cartoon lineup on their channel. And that started airing on September 14th of the same year. Their new Saturday morning lineup consisted of Fighting Foodons, Kirby Right Back At Ya, Stargate Infinity, Ultraman Tiga, the Back to the Future cartoon, Cubics, Funky Cops, Pirate Islands, Shaman King, WMAC Masters, the F-Zero anime, the first 3 seasons of Winx Club, the rest of them were hosted on Nickelodeon after that, and my 2 personal favorites, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Sonic X, which was like Sonic, except it was an anime now. I still remember where I was when I figured out that a Sonic anime was a thing that was real. It was Christmas in like 2009 or 10, and my dad was, he was watching the TV Guide channel because there wasn't big sports on right then. He turned and looked down at me, and I was playing with my little Gravedigger toy, because everyone had them, and he said, "Hey boy, you like playing the Sonic on your PlayStation, don't you?" Yeah, Dad, yeah, obviously it slaps. I love it. Well, do you want to watch on your TV? You can't do that. That's not real. Sonic is on my video games. He's not a TV man. Then he changed the channel, and sure enough, there he was. Sonic was on the TV. From that moment on, I was immediately hooked. Now, to get back to the main point of the video, I just listed off a really long list of cartoons, and for a new Saturday morning lineup, that's really good. Unfortunately, my tiny infant brain was not able to process all these shows because I was still like a tiny little person, and I didn't know that I was missing some really good stuff. He just threw that worm into the sun, and I was too busy sucking on a pacifier to appreciate that, at least when it originally aired. In January of 2005, after a few years of success with their Saturday morning cartoon lineup, 4Kids rebranded their cartoon block from Foxbox to 4kidsTV. And naturally, this expanded their roster of cartoons. This ended up including Alien Racers, Bratz, Incredible Crash Dummies, Magical Do-Re-Mi, Mew Mew Power, Chaotic, Marillion Invasion, Viva Pinata, Ultimate Muscle, Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monsters, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. And my personal favorite, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Fast Forward. That's what it's called. And I loved it because it was like the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, except they went to the future, and I didn't know that TV shows could do that, and my tiny brain was blown. In another small effort to branch out the company, in 2006, 4Kids partnered with Microsoft to help develop a game for the Xbox 360. They ended up making a Viva Pinata game. Yeah, there it is. And believe it or not, it was developed by Rare, as in That rare, as in previous titan of the industry rare. And now you know why they were a previous titan of the industry. In October 2007, the Kids WB was unfortunately shut down, leaving an open morning cartoon block on its original channel, which happened to be the CW. And on December 28th of that same year, tragedy struck a second time, because in an effort to conserve funds, 4Kids had to pull out of their deal with Fox, which meant that the 4Kids that was airing there had to be discontinued. And on top of that, almost an entire year later, 4Kids had to cut 15% of their staff just because they couldn't pay them anymore, which is obviously horribly depressing. 4Kids was not about to let the flame die out completely. See, remember a few minutes ago when I had said that Kids WB shut down, leaving that nice, sweet, juicy open spot on their channel? Well, as it turns out, 4Kids had a backup plan, and they had bought that TV block and started airing something that they called the CW 4Kids. If you didn't catch it, it's 4Kids like 4Kids Entertainment. And this was obviously a good thing because that meant that they wouldn't have to stop producing cartoons entirely. They had an entire second branch to do it with, and also for cheaper because Fox is like here and the CW is somewhere below that. I'm not a statistics man. I don't think that's statistics anyways. Moving on. 4Kids' new block started airing cartoons on May 24th, 2008, which, if you remember, is before they actually had to shut down with Fox that December. From May 2008 to December 27th, 2008, they actually were making double what they already were, leaving them with over 9 hours of morning cartoons, which is pretty dang good. And again, like last time, with this new expansion came a new roster of shows. This included Eon Kid, Johnny Test, World of Quest, Tom and Jerry Tales, Magi Nation, The Spectacular Spider-Man, Will and Do It, and Skunk Fu. And there's more. That was all the shows they debuted with, which is really good. But they later went on to produce The Batman, Chaotic, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Dinosaur King, Go-Go Riki, Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, and my favorite of all time, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. It was like normal Yu-Gi-Oh!, which was, as shown, pretty dang cool. Except then they were on motorcycles, which to like 8 to 10-year-old is probably the coolest thing you could ever do. Because you had all these people, you know, playing cards on motorcycles against each other with big monsters, and they weren't even getting in car crashes like you would in real life, and nothing has been cooler since then. The CW 4Kids ran strong for a couple years until they had to rebrand again to something called Toon's Eye, which unfortunately fully erased the 4Kids name off of TV. But obviously, the 4Kids Entertainment Studio was still producing it. This is the part I like to call the beginning of the end. So in an effort to knock off Toonami, a very similar sounding show where they also premiered anime, they started airing Dragon Ball Z Kai, which, if I'm remembering correctly, is their own dubbing of the show, which was more geared towards children. I always tried to watch it. I never got the chance because my parents were watching the news or something, and they only ever aired the episode where Goku is trying to train with that mustache guy on the really heavy planet when he's dead. Spoilers, he's dead. Sadly, with the transition to Toon's Eye, 4Kids actually lost a lot of shows rather than gained them. And this left their block with only 16 unique shows. Only 2 of them being from the original 4Kids, that being Yu-Gi-Oh! And Sonic X, thank God. On August 18th, 2012, the branding changed again, this time from Toon's Eye to Vortex. Vortex brought over new content, of course, this including Transformers Prime and Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, and somehow it also pulled off the miracle of having some Marvel content and then some DC content, which even to this day is pretty cool because you don't see a lot of people able to pull that off. As cool as that was, at the end of the day, not a single new show that Vortex brought on lasted more than a year, which left the ones from before, that being from Foxbox to Toon's Eye, that left 6 shows standing. Sadly again, Vortex was the last Saturday morning cartoon block 4Kids would go on to produce. It was replaced with something called One Magnificent Morning, on October 4th, 2014. It didn't help that back in 2012, they were actually under lawsuit and lost, forcing the company to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Not good. They actually ended up recovering from that later that year, only to have to file again in 2016. And they haven't recovered since. And that actually brings an end to the saga for the 4Kids brand, aka my childhood. I remember getting up with the sun every Saturday morning just to make sure I was able to watch Yu-Gi-Oh! On motorcycles or Sonic in the anime, and getting upset when my parents would decide they'd rather watch the news than my silly little cartoons, until like 10, and make me catch like the last 5 minutes of Dragon Ball before my Hedgehog anime came on. It's unfortunate that they're gone, but it is good to see that there is still good kids content being put out there, making sure that kids have just as good and inspired of a childhood as I had watching cartoons. That's it.